There are places on this planet where no human being should ever be. 142 meters below the ocean surface is one of those places. Total darkness, crushing pressure, absolute silence. It was there that a diver found something that would change his life forever. A miracle of the Virgin Mary in a place where only God could witness it. But before we continue, leave a comment saying where you're watching from and what time it is there right now. I'd love to see how far the miracles of the Virgin Mary are reaching. You know, that kind of job most people don't even know exists? Michael Carson, 36 years old, was one of those invisible workers, a commercial diver, a saturation diver to be exact, the kind who descends to places sunlight never reaches, the kind who lives in pressurized chambers for weeks, his body saturated with helium and oxygen, his voice coming out thin and distorted like a cartoon character. 14 years doing that. 14 years going down where the pressure could crush a car. 14 years coming back to the surface alive, until that day in March. The platform stood 380 kilometers off the coast of Louisiana, a giant of metal and concrete balanced over the ocean, 142 meters down to the seabed, producing 45,000 barrels of oil a day. Michael had been there for 3 weeks. One more week and he'd be back on land. To his empty apartment in Houston, to the weekly calls with Emily that lasted 5 tense minutes. Hi, Dad. Hi, sweetheart. How was school? Good. And your math test? It was okay. I have to go do homework. Okay. I love you, Emily. Silence. Bye, Dad. 3 years since the divorce. 3 years trying to be a father from a distance. 3 years failing miserably. Jennifer had been clear when she signed the papers. You chose the ocean, Michael. Don't blame me when our daughter grows up not knowing you. She was right. He knew it. But here, at the bottom of the ocean, he didn't have to think about that. Here, there was only work, darkness, the muffled silence of the water surrounding him. It was easier that way. On the morning of March 14th, the dive supervisor knocked on the door of the saturation chamber at 6:47 a.m. Carson, we've got a problem. Michael was already awake. He always woke up early. What kind of problem? Leak in the main pipeline expansion joint. Needs immediate visual inspection. Michael sat up on the narrow bunk. His chambermate James, a 25-year-old kid on his first offshore contract, was still sleeping deeply. Youth. When do I go down? As soon as possible. Production's compromised. Production compromised. The magic words. Every hour of halted production meant hundreds of thousands of dollars lost. Give me 15 minutes, Michael dressed in silence. Thermal suit, layers of protection. The cold at 142 meters was brutal, even with a heated diving suit. James woke up at the noise. We got to dive? Leak to inspect. The kid went pale. 142 meters? That's where we are, James. Never been that deep. Michael looked at him. It's just more pressure. Your body can't tell the difference. A blatant lie. The body always knew. Every cell screamed it didn't belong there. In that place where humans were fragile, temporary intruders. But James didn't need to know that. In the locker room, they crossed paths with Rodriguez. A 50-year-old Mexican welder, father of 3 in Texas, always with a smile on his face, despite working 12-hour shifts in conditions that would make most people quit in the first week. Careful down there, hermanos. Rodriguez made the sign of the cross, an automatic gesture Michael had seen hundreds of times. Then the man held something out, a small medal hanging from a thin chain. Take this, Our Lady. My wife makes me carry it all the time. Protection. Michael looked at the medal, silver medal with the image of the Virgin Mary. I don't need that, Rodriguez. I've got $50,000 worth of equipment keeping me alive. The equipment takes care of the body, my friend. Rodriguez tapped his chest. This takes care of what really matters. Thanks, but no. Michael handed the medal back. He saw the disappointment cross Rodriguez's face, but didn't care. Superstition. That's all it was. At 7:23, Michael and James entered the diving bell, a 3-meter metal capsule that would be their temporary home in the abyss. The door closed with the heavy sound of metal against metal. The crane began lowering the bell. The silence was broken only by James's breathing and the hiss of the radio. "Diving bell, this is surface control, passing 40 meters. "Systems normal," Michael replied. 70 meters, 110. James was visibly tense, his fingers gripping the safety handles. "The first time's always the worst," Michael said, more to fill the silence than out of genuine compassion. "How do you handle it? Going down like this? In the dark? So deep?" Michael didn't answer right away. How could he explain that it was easier to face the ocean than to face his own life, that the darkness outside was less frightening than the darkness within him? "You get used to it," was all he said. The capsule touched the seabed with a soft thud. 142 meters below the surface, 20 atmospheres of pressure. The equivalent of having 20 elephants balanced on every square centimeter of the body. Control, preparing for exit. Leak approximately 30 meters northeast of your position. Michael and James began to gear up. Helmets, umbilicals, the hoses that supplied breathing mix, power, communication, lifeline, literally. "Ready?" Michael asked. James nodded, but his eyes betrayed his fear. The capsule door opened. Michael went out first. He always did. Black water. Cold. Visibility maybe 3 meters at best. The helmet lights created weak cones of yellowish light that only deepened the dancing shadows. "Jesus!" James whispered over the radio as he exited the bell. Michael activated the wrist compass and started swimming. James followed, their umbilicals unwinding from the reel inside the bell. The seabed wasn't the flat desert people imagined. Decades of oil operations had left their trash behind. Corroded metal structures, abandoned cables, lost tools, even an old diving helmet encrusted with marine life. Michael swam through this ghostly field of debris. Every object had a story. Every piece of equipment represented someone who had worked there, descended into the dark, returned to the surface, or not. "There," James pointed. The platform's structures emerged from the darkness like the bones of some technological leviathan. Pipes as thick as tree trunks, concrete supports the size of buildings, and there where James pointed, the unmistakable gleam of leaking oil. "Control! Visual on the leak!" Michael swam closer. The main pipeline had a visible crack, oil slowly gushing out, rising in oily spirals through the water, but that wasn't all. "Control!" Michael examined more closely. "The leak isn't just at the expansion joint. The pipeline has multiple fractures. This isn't normal wear. It looks like structural failure." Tense silence on the radio. Maintain a safe distance and continue documenting. Michael started filming with his helmet camera, moving slowly around the compromised section of pipe. That's when it happened. A crack. Loud. Metallic. Michael felt it before he understood. Vibration in the water. Sudden movement in the surrounding structures. A section of the pipeline shifted. Not much, maybe 30 centimeters. But enough. Michael instinctively turned to move away, and felt the sharp pull, his umbilical, the lifeline connecting him to the bell. Stuck. He tried swimming backward. The line wouldn't budge. It was caught between the displaced pipe and a concrete frame. "Control, we have a problem. Umbilical compromised." The response came distorted, chopped by static. "Amena, position, sendi, control, repeat." Only static. Michael tapped the helmet communicator. Nothing. The radio was dead. He looked at the gas mixture gauge on his wrist and felt something cold crawl down his spine. The numbers were dropping. That shouldn't be possible. The umbilical supplied a continuous flow of breathing mix from the bell, a steady, endless stream, except when the umbilical was damaged. 70% air, 65%, 60%. Michael forced himself to stay calm. Panic consumed oxygen faster than anything. He swam to where the umbilical was trapped, pulled, tried different angles. The hose didn't move a millimeter. The pipe had shifted to form a perfect vise of metal and concrete. 55% air, 50%. Okay. Think. Michael looked around. He needed a tool, something to use as leverage, something to force the pipe back. The helmet lights swept over the seafloor. Debris everywhere, old equipment, rusted structures, and there maybe 15 meters away, a pile of abandoned tools from some old operation. 45% air. Michael tried swimming toward the tools. The umbilical held him back. Like a leash, he managed to move maybe 5 meters before it went completely taut. Not enough. The tools were out of reach. 40% air. He tried again to free the umbilical. Useless. It was completely pinched. He tried disconnecting the umbilical from the helmet side. The connectors were safety grade, designed not to come off easily. Cruel irony, 35% air. Michael stopped, breathed, forced himself to think clearly. Options. Wait for rescue. But without communication, how long would it take for them to find him? Cut the umbilical and use the emergency reserve, but the backup valve. He tested the emergency valve, turned the control, locked. He turned harder. Nothing. The backup valve was completely stuck. Oxidation? Extreme pressure? It didn't matter. It was inoperable. 30% air. No. There was no option 2. With the backup valve not working, cutting the umbilical would be fatal. And staying here, waiting for the compromised flow to eventually stop completely, was also fatal, just slower. 25% air. Michael looked up, toward where the surface should be 142 meters above, invisible in total darkness. He looked at the trapped umbilical. He looked at the gauge, 20% air. And for the first time in 14 years working in the ocean, Michael understood with absolute clarity. There was no way out. Michael stopped fighting. There was nothing more to do. He floated there, suspended in the black water, the helmet's floodlights illuminating nothing but drifting particles, dancing like ghostly snow. Emily. The name of his daughter came out as a whisper. 9 years old, brown hair like her mother's. When was the last time he had truly seen her, not just visited? Really seen her 2 months ago? A weekend in Houston. Jennifer had let him take Emily to the park. The girl had spent the whole time on her phone. When he dropped her off Sunday night, Emily got out of the car without looking back. "I love you," he shouted. She didn't answer. And now he would never have the chance. 3% air. Michael closed his eyes. If anyone's listening, anyone at all, I failed. As a father, as a husband, as a human being. His voice cracked. But please, take care of her. Take care of Emily. She deserves a world I couldn't give her. 1% air. The regulator made a sound. Michael took one last breath. He opened his eyes and saw something in the sand, just a few meters away, glowing, impossible. There was no source of light besides his helmet's floodlights, and they weren't pointing there. But it was there. A soft glow, pale blue. A hallucination, probably. But Michael looked. The object was partially buried in the seabed sand. Only a small part visible, but definitely glowing. With the last remnants of consciousness, Michael pulled. The umbilical held him. Trapped. Always trapped. But maybe, if he stretched, if he reached. He extended his arm. Fingers stretched to the limit. Almost, a little more. He touched and dug. Gloved hands pushing away sand, silt, sediments of decades. His fingers touched something solid. He pulled. It came free from the sand. A statue, small, maybe 30 centimeters, covered in algae and marine incrustations. But clearly a statue. A blue mantle still visible beneath the layers of sea life. A serene face, hands in a posture of prayer. Virgin Mary. Michael held her. He didn't know why, he didn't think. He just held her and whispered the last words he could form. Please? Click. A sound. Mechanical? Impossible. Michael looked at the gauge on his wrist. 0%. Still 0. But something had changed. The emergency valve, the backup reserve that had been jammed, unlocked. Oxygen flooded the regulator. Michael breathed once, twice, 3 times. Air filling desperate lungs. Life returning in waves. He gasped, coughed, breathed again. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. Valves don't unlock under pressure. They don't unlock on their own. They don't unlock at the exact needed moment. Michael looked at the statue of the Virgin Mary in his hands. Even through the marine encrustations, the face was intact, looking at him, serene, compassionate. He looked at the gauge. The emergency reserve had maybe 15% of air, enough to reach the capsule. Maybe, if he went straight, if he didn't waste time. Michael looked at the tether. No more time or strength to free it. He took the knife, cut it, immediately began to float without the weight of the hose. Michael looked around in the darkness. Where was the capsule? Without the tether guiding him, without reference points, without communication. He tried to remember. They had swum. How far? 30 meters from the bell to the leak? 40. In which direction? The current could have spun him around. The darkness was total. No reference points. 10% air. He chose a direction, based on instinct, on hope, on nothing. He started to swim, the statue of the Virgin Mary still in his hands. He couldn't let go. He didn't want to. 8% air. Come on, come on. He swam through the darkness. Nothing. Only black water, occasional debris, but not the bell. 6% air. He changed direction slightly, kept swimming, and then he saw it. Lights. Faint, but lights. The capsule. 4% air. Michael swam with everything he had left. The capsule entrance appeared, door open, waiting. 2% air. He went in. Slammed his fist on the emergency close control. The door sealed with a pneumatic hiss. And Michael lay on the metal floor of the capsule, still holding the statue against his chest, breathing the pressurized air in desperate gasps. Alive. Impossible, but alive. Michael looked out the cafeteria window. The ocean was calm that day, a mirrored surface reflecting clouds. I don't know, was his honest answer, but I'm alive. Rodriguez came to speak with him on the last day before Michael went back to land. I heard what happened down there. News travels fast. The statue you found? May I see it? Michael went to the locker and came back with it. Rodriguez took it with reverence, turned it over in his hands, studied the face. Our Lady, he said softly. He paused. The medal I offered. You refused it. I know. Sorry. No need to apologize. Rodriguez smiled. She found you anyway. The Virgin Mary always finds those who need her. And he left before Michael could answer. The helicopter took Michael back to land on a Thursday afternoon. 28 days offshore, 4 weeks on the ocean, 4 weeks away from everything. Houston was hot, loud, chaotic after the silence of the rig. Michael took a cab to his apartment, small, 1 bedroom, minimal furniture. He spent so little time there, he never bothered to make it a real home. He dropped his backpack on the floor. The statue was wrapped in a towel at the bottom. He took it out, looked at it for a long moment, then placed it on the shelf beside the TV. It looked strange there, out of place, covered in marine incrustations and dried seaweed between the books and DVDs. But it was there. Michael picked up the phone, stared at it for several minutes before dialing. Jennifer answered on the 3rd ring. Michael? Hey. Are you okay? You sound weird. I'm fine, just got back. Oh, good. Silence. Can I talk to Emily? She's at the mall with her friends. She'll be back at 6. Okay. Could you ask her to call me? Sure, but you know how she is with these things. I know. More silence. Michael, did something happen? He looked at the statue on the shelf. "I almost died," Jennifer gasped. "What?" "At the bottom of the ocean. Equipment failed. I ran out of oxygen." "Oh my God, Michael." "I'm fine. I'm here." How did you survive?" "It's complicated." "Michael." "Jennifer, I just wanted to talk to Emily, to say that I love you, both of you, to say I'm sorry for not being the father she deserves, to say that—" His voice broke. "To say that when I thought I wouldn't make it, all I could think about was her." Jennifer was crying on the other end of the line. Michael sat on the couch for an hour. Then he looked at the statue on the shelf. "Thank you," he whispered, "for saving his life, for giving him a second chance, for reminding him he had something to come back to, all of them, every one." 3 weeks later, Michael went back offshore, new shift, same platform. The work went on. It always went on. But something was different. He called Emily every 2 days now. Short conversations, but real ones. He talked about work. She talked about school. They started laughing together again, little by little. One day, a new diver arrived. A 24-year-old kid, first contract, nervous. "Are you Carson?" he asked in the cafeteria. "I am." "I've heard stories about you." "What kind of stories?" "That a statue of the Virgin Mary saved you." Michael took a sip of coffee. "So, it was a miracle." Michael thought about the question, the same one he had asked himself 1,000 times. "I don't know," he answered honestly, "but I'm here." The kid nodded. "I guess that's what matters." "I think so." That night, Rodriguez stopped by Michael's quarters. "Got a minute?" "Sure." Rodriguez came in holding something. He handed over a small cloth pouch. Michael opened it. Inside, a medal, Our Lady. "Rodriguez, I can't—" Rodriguez cut him off. "It's for you to remember." "Remember what?" "That someone's watching over you." Rodriguez walked to the door, then paused. "And Carson?" "Yes? I'm glad you came back, from the ocean, and to your daughter." One weekend in Houston, Emily came to visit him. 13 hours together. They watched movies, ate pizza, talked about everything and nothing. And when Emily started exploring the apartment, still getting used to being there, she saw the statue on the shelf. "Dad, what's this?" Michael came from the kitchen. Emily was holding the statue of the Virgin Mary. The marine encrustations still covered parts of it. Michael had never completely cleaned it. "I found it at work." "At the bottom of the sea?" "Yeah." Emily examined the piece, turned it over in her hands. "It's beautiful." Emily placed the statue back on the shelf. "Are you going to keep it?" "I am." "Why? Is it special?" Michael looked at his daughter, 9 years old, looking more like Jennifer every day, smart, curious, beautiful. "It is," he said, "very special." Why? How to explain? How to put into words what had happened 142 meters below the surface? The darkness, the fear, and then the impossible. Was it a miracle? Was it a coincidence? Michael would never know for sure, but he knew this. In that moment, in the loneliest place on the planet, when there was no one left to witness, when it was just him and the endless darkness, he was not alone. And look, if you've made it this far, to the end of Michael's story, do one thing for me. Write the word oxygen in the comments, because that's exactly what the Virgin Mary gave back to him when everything seemed lost. I want to see how many hearts this story truly reached. And every time I read those numbers in the comments, I'll know that one more person believes that miracles still happen, even in the darkest, most impossible places. Now I want to give a special thank you to the first 20 people who shared their faith in the comments, and remember, the next 20 people who comment on this video will also appear in the next one. Thank you for being part of this community of faith. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell. Write in the comments about a miracle you've witnessed or experienced, and share this video with someone who needs to renew their hope today. May the Virgin Mary continue to bless and protect you and your family. Amen.